thought that episode was amazing. So imagine my surprise when I logged on to Twitter after I watched it to discover that some of you did not care for it. And I would be genuinely curious to hear why down below in the comments. Sure, when Bo-Katan stepped up to take on Moff Gideon one-on-one, I was like, here we go again. And I did want her, though, to come to Din Djarin's aid. But as the episode progressed, and thankfully, it was all three of them. You needed Din Djarin, Grogu, and Bo-Katan to take down Moff Gideon. You know, they had to work together in stark contrast to Paz Vizsla, who went down alone. I thought that was a really valuable lesson on display, not just for kiddos, but for everyone. All that matters is defeating the enemy and living to see another day. Even Axe didn't sacrifice himself taking out the base. I thought for sure he might. That's how they were having it go. But at the last minute, he got out of there, man. Oh, by the way, I am surprised. I did not know that Mandalorian suits could work in space. I think maybe because they seem so cheap as a costume. They're like, you know, the helmet locking, and I'm like, that just, you know, doesn't unlock when you take it off. So, you know, how about some consistency here? If there's one thing the Mandalorians don't have, it's consistency. So anyway, it was some cool shots, though, when they were flying around in space. I was like, wow. But I just think this is a great change to the way historic stories are told, which are usually about a lone hero who has to sacrifice themselves. Because Bo-Katan, she even had that great line where she said, Mandalorians are stronger together. I was like, oh boy! And to have this militaristic society focus on the team, like real-life military units, again, instead of a lone hero, is really fantastic. So beautiful. Just like when after Moff Gideon was killed, his career was short-lived. Or was it? He got clones. We'll talk about him a little bit more in a moment. What I'm going to do for this video is we're going to talk about my initial thoughts, then we're going to talk about the future that is set up with this, and then we're going to go over some of the amazing action sequences. But anyway, when Grogu used the Force to save Din Djarin and Bo-Katan, they were like a family, huddled under that Force bubble with the fire raging over them. I just love that so much. But much like Shane, this is a Western, so in the end, Din Djarin, with his new apprentice/son, had to ride off into the sunset. See you again someday, Bo-Katan. Maybe my path will bring me back around here. It's the way they always do this in Westerns. I don't think, it's very rare in a Western where the hero settles down with the love interest. He just occasionally will see her. So he's off on his own for more adventures, potentially in a season 4 or in the upcoming Filoni movie. I think, you know, they really left their options open intentionally, depending on the ratings of this show, which seem fine. I don't think it's like a mega hit, but it's solid. It's up there. You know, even though it includes past seasons, who cares? It's still, I think, performing, you know, solidly at the very least. And then, of course, there are the unfortunate politics still behind the scenes at Lucasfilm. I hope they figure all that stuff out. But also, since it's pretty clear that Din Djarin ain't never taken his helmet off again, ever, even in the middle of nowhere in that house, the current system that they have set up is, I think, really great and will work for everyone no matter what might be going on behind the scenes. And I think it really is a best case scenario. You have Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder doing the physical performance, while Pedro Pascal, anywhere on the globe while he's doing anything else, can just hop into a sound studio and do the recording session to provide Din Djarin's voice. I think it works. I think it works. So let's consider the future of The Mandalorian and Star Wars. So I thought for sure Grogu was going to speak, especially since the armorer said he couldn't become an apprentice or be christened in the waters of Mandalore if he couldn't speak. And I thought they would christen him, and then when everyone said this is the way, he would join in. Or at that moment when the armorer said, oh, he can't talk, he would have been like, this is the way, and we'd be like, hooray! But he didn't speak. He still didn't speak. But instead, he got a permission slip from his dad. Because Din Djarin adopted him, and he is now Din Grogu, which I also love. I absolutely love this development. The legend of Din Grogu and the Mandalorian Din Djarin grows. I think that was fabulous. Thankfully, the Praetorian Guard hacked IG-12 to bits. Yes, that's what I was thinking when they did that. And Grogu got out of that stupid thing, went back to using the Force like the Jedi that he is. I wish he'd gotten his little stroller back. I didn't think that was the stroller. He was funny at the end when he was walking into the bar with Mando and his little legs were going. He was like, "Here I come." And I'm like, "Go get him another floating, it's not a stroller. It's his little pod. There's no shame in the pod." So I thought that was, I thought it was fantastic that he went back to doing that. And to see him working, using the Force with Din Djarin and Bo-Katan was, for me at least, very rewarding. I was like, we're doing it! The way he could hold back the fighters and sometimes their weapons to give Djarin, which I guess is his first name, right? And Bo the edge they needed during their fights. I was like, he didn't put himself in near, he stayed on the edge of the fight, but he still was able to lend an assist. Like an apprentice. Oh, it was great stuff. And now the armorer, who is maybe Jon Favreau under there, right? She very much does the writer's bidding. Mando's like, we're both christened, we're on Mandalore. And she's like, not so fast. Now it's time for you to go on adventures. She's like, you can't stay here. And we're all like, but what about everyone else? Why doesn't anyone else have to go on an adventure? Why does other people get to take their helmets off and some don't? The rules for the Mandalorians become more and more arbitrary, particularly for Din Djarin. He should be like, I feel targeted here, man. Anyway, Din Djarin sets up a sweet deal where he's going to work under the table for the New Republic, right? Hunting down Imperial remnants. Oh boy, he's where the action is. Because remember, that's what the Filoniverse movie is going to be about. The New Republic versus the Imperial remnants. So either season 4 will do even more work to set up the movie, or perhaps we'll run into Din Djarin and Din Grogu in the movie with their work setting up the story or somehow being involved. I think it's great. Then Greef Karga, a good friend and clever magistrate, gifts Din Djarin a little house on Nevarro for between adventures, a spot for them to rest their helmets. And why doesn't Grogu have to wear a helmet? It doesn't make any sense. All right, so anyway, also, I'm sure Greef Karga wants them around on Nevarro to help with security, although IG-11 is back, the new sheriff of Nevarro. There's a new sheriff in town. So now, I gotta tell you, Din Djarin did a real nice job setting up a life for him and Grogu. The last shot is right out of a Western, although it had that great Star Wars end with the shadow come in with the circle. But our hero has a little plot of land to call his own, waiting for a wrong to come along that he can right. He sure spoils Grogu something awful, though. Grogu is an apprentice now. Shouldn't he be taking things more seriously? Shouldn't he be training? But I guess let Grogu be a child for the decades that he is a child. But I guess, it still works. So that just shows even more that Din Djarin is a good dad. And hey, Grogu didn't eat that frog, so he is maturing, right? As for the Mandalorians, Mandalore is their home once more. The Great Forge literally fired up again. And they're indeed a progressive society led by not one, but 2 women, very cool women. And the armorer wasn't a spy, thank goodness. Mandalore has literally sprung to life. Those gardens are lovely. And we got the Star Wars version of Life Finds a Way. And they're following Bo-Katan even without the Darksaber. When Moff Gideon crushed it, I actually out loud said, oh shit. Because it was so bad. I was like, I can't believe you lost that. And take it to those little guys on Nevarro. Maybe they can fix it. And I was, at the moment, I was like, Bo-Katan, you should have retreated. That giant flaming ship is inbound. Get out of there while you can, and you would have kept the Darksaber. But maybe then, when you think about it, Moff Gideon would have escaped. And as Din Djarin said, as long as he's alive, this will never end. Super cool and super true. So the 3 of them held Moff Gideon there, willing to sacrifice their lives, because they didn't know what Grogu was going to do, to take Moff Gideon out. Is Moff Gideon dead? That one is. But as I said, the dude's got clones. I loved when that one clone woke up, by the way. I could tell they were Moff Gideon even before we went in for the close-up. But I was like, I need a close-up to confirm. And they looked fully grown to me. So who's to say one didn't crawl away after the fighting? They had been released from their pods by Din Djarin. And now with Force sensibilities. And would Moff Gideon 2.0 have his memories, or is he just a husk? The Emperor seemed to have his memories, although he was falling apart. So we'll see how good this batch is. But this is going to be a real problem with Imperial leadership because it makes them even harder to kill because they all have backup copies, which is really interesting. As I told you, cloning, it's here to stay. I'd love to see a Force-sensitive Moff Gideon appear in the future. Will he be changed at all by his experiences, for the better or worse? He is, after all, very clearly Darth Vader for the Dins. And I love that! We have a new clan in Star Wars. So far, it's always been, are you a Skywalker? But now we also have the Dins. Oh, that's so awesome. When you just hear the name, you get chills. Oh, it's so good. Speaking of movies, though, why isn't Rick Famuyiwa given a movie? Why didn't they give him the Rey movie? With all due respect to that Ms. Marvel director, I saw Ms. Marvel, and it never had any sequences as cool as these last 2 episodes. Remember back in the day, Famuyiwa was going to do The Flash, right? His breakout film, Dope, is pretty dope. And it starred Shameik Moore, who went on, of course, to be the voice of Miles Morales. It also had Tony Ravolo in there as well. But I thought this episode was movie level when it came to the visuals and the action sequences. So let's go through them. Din Djarin got a hallway fight, and what a hallway fight it was. We saw Moff Gideon go down that same hallway last episode, and here, with no weapons, Din Djarin brilliantly went one stage at a time, taking on 2 guards at each stage before R5 unlocked the next force field. And he tried to take their weapons at each turn so that he could arm himself. And I loved when in that first one, when he reached for that guard's gun as he fell and he didn't get it in time. What does the Empire have against guardrails? It's such a security and safety issue, and it always seems to work against them. But the whole sequence was just excellent to see Din Djarin move to each next stage, leveling up with new weapons as he went along, often emerging from the smoke with the element of surprise. And again, as I said, R5 got to do some R2-D2 action here, although unlike Luke Skywalker, Din Djarin doesn't speak binary. What a cool term for their language. How could anyone speak binary? It just sounds like bloop, 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 bloop to me. All right, then we got a Game of Thrones type battle in the sky, Bo-Katan with the dark saber doing her best Jon Snow. I was like, that is amazing. And the armorer wailing away on dark troopers with her hammers. So cool. Bo-Katan had some great moves overall here, like when she flew under that bridge to lose those dark troopers and then opened fire on them from the new position. They might have just gotten jetpacks, but Bo-Katan grew up with them. And then at the beginning of the season, I had thought the Mandalorians were coming across like cosplayers or LARPers, but I think with Famuyiwa's direction, they seem like the awesome space marines that they are. And I am once again excited for their future. And also, as I said, to go from a lone figure, a bounty hunter like Boba Fett, to brothers and sisters, which is the way of real life military units and honors real life military people in service. I just thought that was just such a great idea. I loved it. And sometimes military folk go on their own, right? And then come back to the group like Mando, I guess. But it was just great. Then, of course, the big finale fight, which, like all great fights, particularly Star Wars, had multiple stages. So we started out with Din Djarin versus Moff Gideon, and it wasn't looking good, with Moff Gideon's technical upgrades, no genetic ones just yet, really giving him an edge. And I kept hoping Bo-Katan would come in as a reinforcement, but instead the Praetorian Guard came in to reinforce Moff Gideon, and that was just too much for Grogu, who came from his hiding place to defend his, at that point, unofficial papa. I thought it was really powerful that once Grogu was in danger, Din Djarin couldn't care less about defeating Moff Gideon. And that really showed that he was a true parent of Grogu, and I felt that was very moving. So Bo-Katan taps in, right? Allowing Din Djarin to go help Grogu. She's like, go get your kid. And I was like, yes! And she took on Moff Gideon solo, at least for a little while. And I thought she really held her own here. And it was she, not Din Djarin, who Moff Gideon unmasked, which I'm sure maybe rubbed some of you the wrong way. But I thought it was fine. Especially, whatever. I think we want the show to move forward and the story to move forward. So this is the way. And then after he broke the dark saber, and maybe also Moff Gideon broke her hand. That to me had an echo as well of Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker. But I'm glad that after that, she needed Din Djarin and Grogu to return to help her take out Moff Gideon. Even with an assist from Axe, come to think of it, right? They finally got him, or again, at least this version of him, with the ship on fire coming down behind them before it exploded. With the way you could see this wall of fire and technology racing down in the background. That was incredible. That was an epic shot worthy of Star Wars. So yeah, I loved this episode. A great season finale, and it sets up exciting things for Star Wars going forward as a whole. It puts things in a little bit of a holding pattern, but I think that's because Lucasfilm, unfortunately, is again still figuring some things out. But the Filoniverse seems in excellent hands and moving towards that movie. And while I think Mandalorian Season 4 might be in the air, although Jon Favreau said he already wrote it, I believe, at the very least, we'll see the Dins again in the movie. Next chapter in this story, Ahsoka. Maybe the Dins will show up there. And also Thrawn. And some of you I saw online were disappointed that we didn't get to see Thrawn versus Moff Gideon. But as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Moff Gideon 2.0 shows up in the near future. I mean, how can he not? They didn't show all those clones burning up, and they were released from their pods. And they were fully grown. So one of them even opened their eyes. I think Moff Gideon lives with Force sensibilities, making him a true great villain for Din Grogu. Oh, it's so good. So what did you think? Do you feel a little different about it now that we've talked about it? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.